You're listening to episode 279 of The Secular Buddhist. Welcome to The Secular Buddhist. I'm Ted Meissner. The Secular Buddhist is the official podcast of the Secular Buddhist Association, a grassroots-driven effort to answer the needs of secular teaching and practice for contemporary society. The podcast has interviews and roundtable discussions pertaining to engaged Buddhist training and practice, and the SBA website has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Though the podcast focuses on core practices from a secular viewpoint, more traditional teachings are welcome and openly discussed. Spring Washam returns to speak about her upcoming book, A Fierce Heart, Finding Strength, Wisdom, and Courage in Any Moment. Hi, everyone. I want to thank you for supporting the Secular Buddhist Association with your generous contributions. Because of you, we're able to continue offering this podcast, the discussions on our website, secularbuddhism.org, and of course, our live online practice circle. And if you haven't yet, you're welcome to visit the website and show your appreciation as we appreciate you listening in and sharing your own voice in this exploration of the Dhamma in the world. Thank you. We're glad to have you join us in on the conversation. One of the many ways in which contemporary culture may be a bit different from that of the Buddha's time is the breadth of different cultures available to those interested in the Dhamma. The teachings of other traditions are readily available too, much more than ever before with this information age and in particular with the advent of digital technology. While this can lead to a dizzying array of spiritual choices, views, practices to help us along the journey of life, it's also an opportunity to explore what it would be like to learn what they may have to offer, without having to remain within the confines of just one path. That can speak to many cultures, many people, with many voices. Spring Washam is a meditation and Dharma teacher based in the Bay Area of Northern California. She was trained by Jack Kornfield and now leads retreats throughout the country. Spring is one of the founders of the East Bay Meditation Center in Oakland, where she teaches and leads meditation groups regularly. She is also a member of the Spirit Rock Teachers Council. Spring is considered a pioneer in bringing mindfulness-based healing practices to inner-city communities. She has extensive training in indigenous healing practices and works with students individually from around the world. So sit back, relax, and have a nice taste of togetherness tea. Our guest today is Spring Washam. Spring, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
So it has been almost 7 years since you were last with us on the podcast. Catch us up. What are some of the highlights about what you've been up to since then?
Well, it's been amazing. I've been traveling and writing and teaching, and it's been a full life. A lot of, maturation has happened. They're very different than it was 7-8 years ago.
How so? How has that maturation manifested in your life? Just in your personal practice, I imagine that's been a big part.
Yeah, I think, one grows a lot when they're teaching and they're building community and doing retreats. It's just always evolution. I think working with others, if you're not growing, something's going on. You're not digging deep enough.
So let's talk about your new book. It seems to attend to a lot of cultural influences on one's practice, and that you seem to intentionally make it multicultural. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and what the drive behind that was.
Well, that's a great question. My new book entitled A Fierce Heart and Finding Strength, Courage, and Wisdom in Any Moment. I really wanted to first write a beginning. It started off, it's evolved over the last 4 years, the book project. I think as other writers can relate, it changes you, the content changes, the focus. But I really wanted to create something new and contemporary. Oftentimes in Oakland, I would meet people who would ask me for sort of beginner books or, a book to enter the path, or I just want a book that gives me a little bit about meditation. And I didn't feel like there was something really to offer that was relevant to their life. Urban people, maybe it was a mom with 3 kids, maybe it was a 22-year-old gay man, maybe it was, and I didn't feel like there's anything I could hand them that felt quite right. So this book started off as that, a sort of entry into Buddhism that was accessible and in the language of younger people, urban communities, people that are outside of like the mainstream centers. So it started off as that. And then it became, in addition to that, also really about telling the stories that I've heard over the years. And it
Mhm.
became then little essays on I think, most powerful teachings and topics that I feel are relevant for right now in today's time.
So it's interesting. Reaching a more diverse audience seems to be a strong interest here, and I'm glad to see the cover of your book. You have a person of color and what looks like a bit of intersectionality, if it's appropriate for me to say that. Tell us a little bit about that. There's a story behind that cover.
Intersectionality, what would that be in sort of Oakland terminology?
Lamaradoans would have a much better description than I would on this, but I think just a recognition of, you know, people are complicated.
Influences, right? Well, it was very interesting, my dilemma around the cover. And you're right, a cover of something really says a lot. It kind of gives you, it's a snapshot, and we went through 20 covers that I rejected.
Wow.
And finally, we saw this work of an amazing artist. His name is Paul Lewin, and he is an African American man in downtown Oakland, and his art was just beautiful. So we contacted him, the publishers, and we asked him if he had something, and he came back with this amazing woman. And I said, if you're going to write a book called A Fierce Heart, you have to have a fierce cover. I couldn't have
Mhm.
these covers that I needed something also to be representative of the community, something different. I didn't want a traditional lotus on the Buddhist cover or a Buddha statue,
Right.
because it's not just a Dharma book. It incorporates all kinds of teachings from Nelson Mandela
Mhm.
and indigenous elders and Black elk. And it's really a compilation. I compiled many different stories here. So that the cover, yeah, I did want it to be reflective of something new.
And it represents that very well. And I'm glad you brought up Black Elk, for example, and some others that what I'm seeing a little bit more, and I want to know if this is something that you're encountering as well. And I think it is that our multicultural society, we're not monolithic. We're not all just one. There are these tremendous influences in the U.S., particularly in California. There's when you're from a large city, there's a lot of different stuff there, and you're reaching out and you're touching these different facets that are about our human experience. I'm wondering what was that like for you? I mean, what was it as you were looking for things to include in the book that, oh yeah, this touches me in this way, even though it's not a Buddhist thing, it's something else, but it should be in here. What was that like?
Well, it was kind of exciting as I was trying to take these teachings and make them relevant for right now.
Mhm.
And there's all this great wisdom. I always imagine it's like the library in the sky of wisdom, and everyone's talking about similar concepts in different ways. And so I think my struggle was to capture other voices,
Hmm.
because how do you do that? How do you weave that in?
Yeah.
And so I was trying to really create a new interpretation of the Dharma in some way by weaving
Mhm.
all these stories and people and just a more universal Dharma. So it was exciting. It was fun. I was happy to include those voices. It felt important. It also honors these other lineages of the indigenous people and other communities of people we might not associate or talk about in Buddhist circles, but that carry great wisdom. So I was happy to put that forward.
So I'm wondering how, as you're putting this together, did that influence just how you used words and told stories? Did that evolve over the course of the 4 years in putting this together? Did it change from your initial ideas about it?
Yes, it started off being very, very kind of immature. I think it was kind of just recycled information at first. And then as each chapter took a life of its own, right? And when you again this title of fierce, what am I talking about? Strength, courage, and wisdom. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's, so many of us have so many challenges. So I wanted to really give people something that would encourage them to keep going. That would be so the stories became much more real. My own writing about my own trauma and things that happen and revealing a lot of things about my own life, that also became an important part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, I didn't plan on that, and it became much more about that. Like, what is your experience with this? Oh, okay, I actually do have an experience. So I became more vulnerable, authentic, real, kind of
And,
pulled the layers off.
and a difficult journey. It can be tough getting in touch with vulnerability.
Yeah, and good. It's something about it that's also really good. It's not easy, but it feels right when you can speak from that place. It
Yeah.
feels true. I think that's a better word.
So one of the things you mentioned was wanting to write something that was relevant to people today, and maybe getting a little more this world related rather than a very deeply rooted suffering, and everything comes from that. Well, yeah, and in today's society we have other things going on too. I'm wondering if you're thinking, as am I, that this is perhaps the perfect time for a book that goes out of its way to reach more widely like this. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think I know of a book more relevant to our times that we're living in. And, for communities that are marginalized and oppressed and kind of left out, the conversation I think of right now on the political spectrum is who's in and who's out.
Right.
Who gets to be at the table? Who gets to be in the country? Who gets to have a voice? And I think my intention and my hope is to uplift the voices that are in this book, the wisdom, and to create a kind of a dialogue that's more compassionate. I think at the end of the day, it's just our climate, the utter lack of compassion coming out of our administration is so challenging. And so it's like we have to find it in ourselves. And so, in some way, there's a pointing really back in. The book covers the outer levels and what's going on in society, and also deeply within ourselves. What is our internal response?
So maybe getting into more fun areas, what are some of your favorite stories that you included in the book, or maybe stories about writing the book that you ran across that didn't make their way into the pages?
Well, I think for me, I've been taking on writing projects now, but I'm not really a writer. I guess everyone, I feel like I'm a terrible writer. Actually, people try to force it out of me. So the word joyful writer doesn't really come. I was kind of a bit of a tortured writer, and in the depths of suffering while I'm grasping with this process, and so yeah, I don't think I'm classical in that way. And there's There's so many stories, and a lot about the East Bay Meditation Center. The book is dedicated ultimately to the 10 years that we've been in existence in downtown Oakland, and all the stories that I've heard there. And so, in the creating that and sustaining that and being a part of the leadership, and many beautiful stories come from there.
What have you found, just in your own practice, be personally inspiring over these years? What's kept you going in the face of the various challenges that are happening today?
Well, you know what? I guess I always come back to love and compassion, and this commitment to community and this commitment to service. I mean, those are like my three pillars, feeling more love, acting more compassionately in the world, and bringing people together. And when I'm doing that, there's joy.
So, what do you think Buddhism has the most to contribute to society today, and maybe especially now? What's that really, really most important thing that shines for you?
I think stillness. I really think, if you look at our culture, everyone's going so fast and there's technology, so many distractions. But I think the real jewel here and is to hone in on the awareness, the stillness, the mindfulness, the slowing down to being present. I feel like if we just keep amplifying that message and creating opportunities where people can practice that, where they can learn that, I think we're creating a much more healthy society. And it's moving out. They have programs for kids in schools and hospitals. It's like it's a slow, quiet revolution. It's not making the headlines. It's not salacious. It's not violent, but it's slowly, like one person at a time. Exactly what you were saying. Somebody in the middle of the night in Tokyo trying to understand how to work with their mind.
Yeah.
I think this is, and find that still point, find what is present moment. So I feel really good about the direction that that's going,
Yeah.
because I think all good things come from that. The deeper questions will come out of that. It's like the first step. So yeah, I'm happy to be a part of that slow movement, but yet it is picking up steam because so many people are coming into it.
Now, something else that's grown, I think, in the past time since we last spoke is you're doing, I think, more teaching, and on your website, which folks who are listening to the podcast, of course, I'll be linking to the website as well as to the book on the episode page. On your website, you have some offerings there. You have some recordings and things. I'm wondering if you could just chat about that for just a minute, about what's there.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to put a lot more content on my website. So on my website, I have maybe about 10 of my very favorite Dharma talks. I have 4 or 5 YouTube clips that are about meditation, just kind of, a 4-part class series. I'll be adding more content later. I like creating content for the website. Again, as you're a creator of content and podcasts and courses and things to help people visually, audio wise. So yeah, I just tried to offer. I have some links to articles that I've written, and yeah, I actually, my website is something under construction because I want to keep evolving it, like everything else, adding more tools to help people, more things for people to, when they show up there, they walk away with something.
Well, for folks who are listening, the book is available for pre-order as of this recording. It'll be coming out fairly soon in November. Spring, was there anything else you wanted to share with the listeners?
Let's see. I think the only thing I really feel that would be great to underscore is just the commitment again to community. And we were talking about that in a side conversation, and the wisdom of diversity, and not only outwardly, but in our heart. It really starts there. The walls are internal. And so as we grow in compassion, and hopefully those walls start coming down and we just become more inclusive of who's in and who's out.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that's my deepest prayer for this time that we're living in.
Yeah. Well, for folks who are listening, if you want to find out more, the website is springwasham.com. And again, the book will be linked on the episode page. Spring, thanks so much for being here. Let's not wait 7 years to have you back.
Okay, it's a deal.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to hear more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the SBA website at secularbuddhism.org, and you'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. Discussion about this episode can be found on the episode page itself, along with show notes. Sound editing, mixing, and mastering provided by the generosity of Anthony Dominello of StructureFromSound.com. The music for The Secular Buddhist is used by permission from John Kaizen Neptune's CD, Steps in Time. Additional music is provided courtesy of Monty Levinson of Taihei Shakuhachi and Rodrigo Rodriguez. Their websites are linked on the SBA site on the About Podcast Music page. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on The Secular Buddhist.